Hey, welcome back to Disclosures with Nick and Dave. I am your host, Nick Offenkamp, along with my wonderful co-host, Dave Miller. What's going on, dude?
Not a whole lot.
Yeah.
Just a little Pacific Northwest overcast. We got the studio all set up, nice and moody. It's
That's the way.
there's no place I'd rather be right now.
Yeah. I also appreciate for our listeners that the first 5 minutes of every episode is just, how's the weather in the Pacific Northwest?
Personal recap.
Yeah. No, it's good. Well, in the spirit of wasting no one's time, got a great episode today. What are we diving into?
Builders incentives, I think.
Yeah, that sounds more exciting to me than taxes that we were talking about.
Or the weather.
And certainly more exciting than the weather.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to get into this because I'd say it's fair to say that this is somewhat an area of specialty for you, given your background and starting in new construction, if you're unaware.
Yeah.
So,
I got my start in real estate working for New Tradition Homes, which is one of the most highly regarded builders in Clark County, and they've been around since 1984. Started working for them in 2021 and was with them for about 2.5 years before going out on my own and starting the Tartan Team. But that was just such a great experience. And through that process, got to know a bunch of the other local builders. Since going out on my own, I've gotten to represent home buyers and have worked on the buyer side with most of the builders in Clark County. And really ever since interest rates started going up in 2023, builder incentives have been a very common way that builders are trying to win business.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to hear your thoughts on it. So I think the rough show map is we're gonna kind of explain what are the incentives, what are the different options, what are the reasons you might want to choose one versus the other, potential drawbacks to them.
Yeah, how to choose, lending caps, trying to make sense of some of that. And then...
Yeah, and if you don't know what a lending cap is, don't worry.
Yeah.
We're going to get into it.
That's exactly why we're here. Let's go ahead and start because I think you see the headline number. I was actually just researching a bunch of the different local builders, and you see these headline numbers like $35,000 being offered to you in flex cash or closing cost credits or rate buydowns, and that all seems like a really big number and seems like it could be exciting. I think most of us have also been around long enough to realize that nobody has just given us 35 grand out of the goodness and generosity of...
It's a significant chunk of change.
Yeah. Like there's no free lunch, right? And so understanding, okay, where does that 35 grand or whatever the offered incentive is come from, and how can it best be leveraged? But maybe we start by just breaking down the menu of options, the most common incentives that builders are offering.
Yeah, that's good. So what are we saying? What are the menu? What is the options?
Yeah.
What would you say you've seen is the most common?
Yeah. The biggest one is a rate buydown, and rate buydowns can be broken into two different ways. There's a temporary buydown. You'll see this advertised as like a 2-1 or a 3-2-1 buydown. And what this does is it significantly drops the interest rate for the first 1, 2, or even 3 years of the loan. And it could be like on that 3-2-1 buydown, for your first year, it could be 3%. Your interest rate could be 3% lower than the market rate. So today we're at like a 6.7, a 3.7% interest rate. I mean, that could drop your monthly payment, depending on the principal on the loan. It could easily drop it $1,500.
Yeah,
every month.
Yep,
sounds awesome.
So correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding in general is a 2-1 would mean that for the first year after purchase, the interest rate is two below whatever you get your actual loan locked in at. So let's just, for the example, say 6.7. So the first year would be down 2%,
Yep.
and then the second year would be down 1% from that. So it would go from 4.7 for the first year to 5.7 for the second year, and then the third year your rate would revert back
Yeah.
to 6.7.
Good clarification. And then it remains at that 6.7 from years 3 through 30, unless you were to refinance or do something different. And while that can be great, especially for those first couple of years, we've got some cautions. Maybe we'll get into that later, but essentially it's because as your rate goes up every year, so does your mortgage.
Yeah,
pretty significantly.
So something interesting to note and clarify with that is it's not actually like a different loan. The mechanics of how it works typically is that there's a pool of you have to qualify for essentially a 30-year fixed loan at the
market rate
that you're at, and then this buy down is kind of like a separate pool of funds that gets applied to that mortgage payment. So that's important to note, because if you're thinking, oh, hey, if I can, if you're really reaching at the top of your budget and you're like, well, if the rate was just a little bit lower, then I could get into that $900,000 house.
Yeah.
You need to have the credit or the capital or whatever the combination is to actually qualify for the 30-year loan or 15-year loan at the current prime rate.
And it's actually, we call it a buy down, but it's actually the temporary, like a 2-1-3-2-1 buy down. It's actually best to think about it as prepaid interest. That the builder is saying, hey, we will prepay the interest on the first couple of years for the loan, because whatever that dollar amount that they're giving you, we've kind of used the example of $35,000, but that dollar amount, 35 grand, is going to essentially equal 35 grand over 2 or 3 years in interest that you're saving. So it is a dollar for dollar savings. But your point stands so that's why you have to qualify for the full market rate.
Yeah. And we'll probably get into a bit of the potential caution there, as you already alluded.
Yep.
Your rate's going to go back up. Okay.
Yep.
So we got interest rate buy down.
Yep.
You talked about two ones and 3 2 ones.
Temporary.
Is what people probably heard of buying down rate just in general. Maybe explain a permanent rate buy down.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if you're walking around and you see a sign that's like 3% interest rate for your first year, probably a temporary buy down. But then sometimes you'll see a rate that's advertised that's like 1% lower or 0.75% lower than a usual market rate. And this often will be a permanent buy down. And what this actually is, it truly is like, if market rate today is 6.7, well, you could use that $35,000 from the builder, and it's permanently buying the rate down to say, that might be a full percentage point. You could be down closer to 5.7, and then you're going to have that fixed interest rate throughout the life of the loan, whether that's 15 or 30 years or whatever it may be. And that's where you can really see the compounding savings, because now, sure, year one, the monthly savings aren't quite as significant as what you might have with a temporary buy down, but over the course of 5, 10, 15 years, especially, the amount of money that you're saving relative to a rate that was 1% higher. I mean, $500 a month over the course of 10 years.
Right.
It's pretty great.
So what it sounds like you're saying is if you're expecting to be in the house longer, it is likely to make more sense to buy the rate down permanently than do one of these 2-1 or 3-2-1 buy downs. Is that a good summary? From sort of the conventional financing world, if you've interacted with, when I say conventional, I mean non-builder non-builder financed loans, you typically see 0.25% off of your rate costs 1 point or 1% of the sales price of the loan. So in 800 to buy the rate down 0.25% on an $800,000 house would cost $8,000. And to buy the rate down a full percent, which is usually the max, would be times 4. So it would be $32,000 on an $800,000 home to buy the rate down 1 full percent. And granted, builders can work out their own deals with their preferred lender, or in like the really big national builders case, they might actually be the same company, like the same corporation owns the mortgage wing and the building wing. Would you say that sort of 0.25% per point is in general what you've seen for permanent buy down?
Yeah.
When we're talking new construction?
Yep. And the only real nuance that I might add there is that a lot of those numbers are based not on the purchase price of the home, but on the amount of the loan that's being taken.
Great clarification.
And so if somebody's putting 50% down, then on that $800K home, then it's all going to be based off of a $400,000 loan.
Yeah, great.
But yeah, that if you're just doing kind of rough back of an envelope math, using that 0.25% is 1% of loan value buys it down 0.25%
on the rate. Buys the rate down 0.25%.
Yeah, that's a good place to start.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, so we got these two different options for buy down.
Yeah.
What else? What are other ways? You talked about a lot of the time it's branded as flex cash.
Yeah,
meaning
right.
you can use it for what you want. What other options are
feels
there?
Highly redundant, like flex cash.
Cash is already supposed to be the most flexible,
as opposed to I don't know, a gift card. Like but anyway, So closing cost credits are another really big one. Because you could have origination fees, which are totally different from rate buydowns, but those tend to be also about roughly a percent of the loan value. You also have like your title and escrow fees. There might be initial HOA fees. So there's some different prepaids and things that if you want to bring less cash to closing, you cannot use a builder incentive toward your down payment. This is a question that we get a lot. So your down payment is a separate line item from your closing costs. The builder can't help you with the down payment, but pretty much everything else that's on that closing statement that's a cost to you, you could choose to use the builder incentive for, so that essentially all you would have to bring to the table is your down payment.
Yeah. So if you haven't gone through it in a while, or we're talking first-time home buyer, if for anyone listening who might not understand all the mechanics of the purchase, what sort of costs? So they might know, all right, I need to bring a minimum of 3% down to the purchase. That's sort of like across the board. You're probably not going to get any sort of loan product for less than that. And then they're like, oh, they're looking at the numbers and they're thinking, if I can get just 3% of my purchase price, then I'll be able to purchase this house. And then they get into the process and it's like, okay, wait, what are these other fees? So in general, like, what are some of the fees and what do those roughly total in terms of cost?
Yeah, the biggest bucket is going to be fees related to your loan. So if you are taking out a loan, the origination fees, appraisal fees, underwriting fees, there's going to be several items that are all related to getting a loan. And this is actually where shopping lenders becomes really important, because it's not just what's the interest rate that the lender is charging you, but it's also what are their fees. And if there is any sort of a rate buy down, that's also those points that we were talking about is considered a lender fee. We'll do another episode on that another time. And that's something that as well, whenever we're consulting with a buyer, we try to look at your specific situation and the lenders that you're working with so that we have a really clear picture up front, because that's the greatest bucket of variables. But in general, 1 to 1.5% of the loan value again. But if you're only bringing 3% down, I mean, and you're buying a $500,000 home, like that.
Yeah. So let's stick
Several
with
thousand.
800, so the math stays the same.
Oh,
so
sure,
if we're
yeah.
saying 1%, that on 800,000, that's
Another
that's
$8,000.
$8 grand. If it's
just,
closer
just on the loan side.
on the loan side. So now all of a sudden, if you thought all I needed was my $24,000 down payment,
Yeah.
surprise, you actually need another 8, probably is a minimum.
Well, that would just be the loan side, right? Because then you have still your escrow and title fees, which you split with the seller. But in general, that's going to come out to about $1,200, and then there's recording fees and
so the rule of thumb. That if, once again, back of the envelope math is 1 to 1.5% for all the other costs for closing. So like the title, the escrow, all those other things. So let's just call it a cool 12 grand.
Yep.
In addition.
Yeah.
So that's a fee that if you were like, oh, I just need my 3%, now all of a sudden, surprise.
Yeah.
If you're trying to get a loan at that max loan to value, meaning you're only bringing 3% for your down payment, you need to come up with this 12 grand.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like Flex Cash, builder incentive, they're saying, hey, we'll pay for that.
We'll knock out the builder says we can knock out the 12 grand so that all you have to worry about is your down payment. Everything else is on us.
Sure. What you already mentioned that we can't use Flex Cash for the down payment. Maybe we should touch on a little bit. Like, people are listening, they're like, well, I got all this $30,000 to use. Why can't it be used on our down payment?
Yes, that has to do more with lending guidelines and preventing any sort of fraud or embezzlement is the main thing. And candidly, it's kind of outside of the scope of like where I can speak really intelligently right now. Because I know that for most people, they're like, that would be really nice. I would love to bring $0 to the table. Unfortunately, there's also a lot of fraudsters in real estate that too would love to bring $0 to the table and put because essentially every dollar that a buyer isn't bringing to the table is $1 less that they are truly like bought in, invested into the property, which means that risk has to fall to someone else. So even for a lender to only, do a 97% loan to value ratio with the buyer only being in 3%, that's a ton of risk for the lender, which is generally why interest rates are higher when you bring less money down. The guidelines are more stringent, but it all has to do with lending guidelines.
Yeah. So maybe to state it as plainly as possible, a lot of these back end rules that you might be, if you don't live in the mortgage world, are like, what the heck? It primarily has to do with protecting the lender. That's essentially what it comes down to. If you default on your loan and you don't pay, you lose your job, you decide you're moving and you're upside down on the property, that lender has to go through the process. And in a lot of cases, even if they owe a loan that is 80% of the value of the house, they still have to pay a real estate professional and all the fees associated with reselling the house. So even on like a 90% loan to value, so meaning the loan they wrote for the property was 90% of what the property value actually is, the bank is still going to lose money selling that property to a new owner. Yeah. So as you stated, it's their guidelines primarily to protect themselves.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. And so, so for really any buyer, no matter what builder, like if they're offering an incentive, um, uh, rate buy down, whether temporary or permanent, and then closing cost. There's two more on this menu. These ones don't necessarily apply to every buyer. So the next one is like design center, design studio credits, or upgrade allowances. The reason that these don't apply to every new construction buyer is that, as makes sense with design studio, design center, these are credits that are offered when you're actually part of the design process of the home. So the previous ones that we mentioned, a lot of builders have like pre-built inventory that's move-in ready, where all the design selections have already been made. Of course, they're not going to probably give you many upgrade options or allowances at that point once the house is move-in ready. But if you found something prior to framing, or maybe you're buying the lot when it's just dirt and you're going through the entire process of building a home, well, this is where a lot of builders are very happy to say, hey, we'll give you the 35 grand to use towards design studio upgrades, get better appliances, upgrade your hardwoods or your countertops, or whatever it is that you want to do. What are some of the things that, like, advantages and disadvantages that you see to these like design studio upgrade allowances?
Well, so in general, would you say in your experience in new construction, it's safe to say that the money you can use towards the design center, the offers towards property that isn't already built, is going to be significantly less than it is on already built inventory. Is that safe to say? Or would you say you still see, if they're offering 30 grand incentive anywhere, you can use it on you're coming to an empty lot and saying, I want this flooring, this countertop, so on and so forth? Or it, I'm baiting. I'm
Yeah.
baiting the question a little bit,
Yeah.
because the answer is nationally, you're usually not going to get as much money on a product, a home that you're going to design yourself, as you are on pre-built or already built inventory.
Yeah, exactly. It really does depend, like, community to community, and especially with what the builder's own like company goals are, as far as what levers they're pulling and how much they're willing to give on what's called a pre-sale home versus a move-in ready home. Of course, anytime a builder has a home that's complete, they're paying the carrying costs on that home every day until it sells. And so they are extra motivated to have completed homes sold. So, yes, that tends to be where there's the most room for negotiation. But the you can still get some great incentives on the pre-sale side.
On a pre-sale side. Yeah. So to get back to your question,
Yeah.
the design center, using your flex cash or any design center credit that the builder is going to give, can be a great option if you're planning on staying in the house. You're have a longer term mindset, and you really want maybe the infrared heater on the back porch, or
Now we're talking.
yeah, exactly. Maybe you want to upgrade to quartz countertops in the primary suite, so something like that. The thing to note with that is, if you're using those dollars in that way, it really is a choice for your own comfort, your own enjoyment of the house, because there's all sorts of studies on the value that is received from remodels and fix and flips for resale houses. And in general, it depends on your market and the age of the house, but the common knowledge amongst real estate agents is that you're going to receive somewhere between 50 and 75% value back on your dollar. There's almost no upgrade to a house that gives 100% dollar for dollar. And, this is more fix and flip territory where they're looking at exact choices, right? On different things cost different amounts of money, but it's it translates over to new construction in that if you spend 20 grand updating all the countertops and putting in the really nice flooring, it might help sell your house if you go and sell in 10 years. Like, your house is going to show the best in the neighborhood. Depending on what's around you, if the width of the comps and, but in general, if you're in a neighborhood, most of the larger national and regional builders, their finishes are going to be, within a range. And
Yeah.
so if you pick the higher end of those ranges, then your house is going to sell better, but it might not necessarily sell for more.
Yeah.
So that's the real caution of, if you have this 20 grand and you're really looking at this on a dollar for dollar perspective, most of the data indicates you're not going to get that money back, dollar for dollar.
Yeah, and there's several different ways that we can go with this, because that design studio process, that's a real money making center for home builders, because when you're doing the pre-sale process, you start with a base price, but at least most builders here in Clark County, they're telling homeowners to budget 5 to 10% for upgrades in the design studio. And so on that $800,000 home, that's $40,000 to $80,000 that on average most homeowners are adding in their upgrades. And so you hear the builder's offering me a $35,000 incentive, that could knock out most all of the upgrades that I'd want to do. And that genuinely can be really, if those are all upgrades that you were going to do regardless, then essentially it's just a price cut, right? You could still worth running the numbers on would it be better to finance those design choices in and do a rate buy down versus reducing the final purchase price of the home. And that's really what the conversation comes down to, and some of the tools that we're building to help people through this. But just the design studio itself, I think the worst thing that somebody could do with the builder incentive when it comes to the design studio is go in with the mindset of we were probably going to spend $40,000 in upgrades, but because the builder gave us 35 grand, now we're spending 75, 80 grand because the builder's knocking out half of it. And you start adding in a whole bunch of things that it's not that you don't really need them. To your point, you start adding in things that actually probably would make more sense to do after the home closes, because not only do you not get a great return on most of the upgrades that you make in the design studio process, those things are also generally marked up by the builder, because there's typically a contractor that the builder is using that then they might have a local rep, but the builder's got to get a percentage of that. The actual company that they're contracting with has to get a percentage. You just see how this a bunch of middlemen that are all taking a little piece of the pie, where it's if you can get away with what's included, and we can talk strategically about hey, here are the actual things with electrical, structural changes, some of the things that would be really costly to remove and redo later, where you're going to get the highest ROI in those design center upgrades.
Yeah. So I'm hearing two things to take from that point, which the first one is, and you didn't say this explicitly, but it was in there. And if you don't know, if you walk into a model for a builder, you're usually not walking into the base.
Yeah.
You're not walking into that floor plan's base level, right?
Right.
Like the models already have the upgrades in them. So
Yeah.
you walk in and you're like, oh, this is pretty good. And then you can, a lot of the time you can go on their website and do the little 3D tour, and they got the floor plan, but it's just not the same as walking the house
Yeah.
when it doesn't have those upgrades. So that's the first thing, as you mentioned, of like, well, if to get the house you really want, you have to do all the updates, then it is a lot closer to a dollar for dollar, but you need to go in with the assumption of like, hey, this house that I think is $800,000, even though it might be the same floor plan as the model, it's not the same house. Like and even if they seem like small things, if you tally them up over the total size of a house, it makes a significant difference
Right.
in terms of the price. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing you said that I think is a real big takeaway is you and your agent, or you and whoever is advising you, understand the builder is there to make money.
Right.
All of their upgrades are profit generating for them. Like they're not giving it to you at cost out of the goodness of their heart. So in as much as we understand that, what are the things that you could probably shop for yourself? If you want a dimmer switch on a light, don't pay the builder to do it. You could find somebody to do it afterwards. What you can't find someone to do afterwards at the same price is that the builder's going to do it, is anything that would require work behind covered drywall or any structural changes. You can't, if you really want that third car garage, you are not going to be able to just bolt it onto the side of your house at the same price. And in a lot of cases, you're not even going to be able, you would not be able to do it from a permitting standpoint because of how they position the house on the lot, or so on and so forth. So it is hugely important to know what you're spending your money on in terms of the individual items that are offered in the design center. And that's where somebody who has experience in new construction can really help guide you, so you're not spending your money on things that are less than that 50 or 60% return on investment for dollar.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I had a really savvy buyer who just closed on over $1 million home here in a community called Sea Island Farms. And he was, he's done a lot of custom builds before. And he ended up going with the included flooring and the countertop package, rather than upgrade any of that in the design studio. And then just in the first couple of weeks of being in his new home, he hired contractors to come and pull out the countertops and whatnot. And it, in some ways, does it feel kind of wasteful? Maybe, but based upon the markups that the design studio was going to charge him, he did some shopping around and realized, it's actually going to save me thousands and thousands of dollars to just have my own people come in and give me exactly what I want after the home is complete. Similarly with appliances, like the builder might be willing to upgrade your appliances, but they are doing that at the maximum MSRP value. They're not shopping the Costco or Best Buy Black Friday sales to catch you any sort of break there.
Yeah, well, and this also goes into understanding the builders and what the different builders are, from national to larger regional to small local builders, right? Because if you're D.R. Horton or Lennar, special customizations are nothing but a drain on your bottom line.
Right.
And in a lot of cases, the bigger builders, they're doing enough numbers and they can move enough houses, and they have enough money in their budget that they can have these houses sit on their books a little bit longer, that they don't have to play ball with you on these upgrades you want. And then as you move into the smaller builders, there oftentimes tends to be more flexibility and ability to modify stuff. But once again, you got to keep in mind that the builder's making their most amount of money by building that house and closing it. That's when they get paid. So any of this sort of extracurricular upgrades and stuff, like it slows their whole process down, which hurts it from a dollar perspective. The time that house is on their books in a lot of cases is more, costs them more if it takes 2 extra weeks to coordinate all these upgrades.
Yeah.
That the carrying cost of that house for them is going to wash out any profit they might make on the actual
Right.
labor of the upgrade. And that's why those prices are as high as they are, and oftentimes higher than what you could get market rate.
Yep. Yeah. Not to mention the extra risk that it creates for them of doing something wrong. I remember with a Pacific Lifestyle home, they've got these packages of color schemes that you can choose from, and my buyers really wanted to just change like the trim color on a couple of spots in the front elevation of that house, and Pacific Lifestyle was going to charge them like $700 to make a very, very simple change. And we asked, well, why is that? And they were honest about it, which I appreciated the candor of just that it's like, because we have painters and they just look at the page that has this set color scheme, and we know that they get going so fast that as soon as we call out, hey, on this one house, we're going to do the trim a little bit different, they're probably going to miss it. We're probably going to have to call them back out. It's probably going to cost us twice as much and create frustration for everybody. So we put the $700 charge in there as a hedge so that we're not losing when we got to correct the mistake. So we've probably beat that point to death in an episode that's about builder incentives. Obviously, there's so much to say on upgrades and all of that. But then the final option here in the menu of prices, drum roll, any guess what it might be?
Just give them the money back.
Just for the flex cash, I would just like the cash off of the house, right? Like a purchase price reduction.
Yep.
So if it's a $35,000 offer that they're making to you, you can say, take that off of the 800, and what does that put us at? 765?
765, I think.
Public math working for me. I love it. Now, not every builder is willing to do this, which can drive some people nuts. Why would a builder not want to just give you $35,000 off the purchase price?
For the same reason they've done everything in the last 3 incentives, to protect their bottom line.
How does it make a difference to them, though, right? If they're giving you $35,000 in closing cost credits or rate buy down or design incentive, why is that? How does that protect them when it's still the same $35,000, is it not?
Yeah. So it's a good question. And to answer it, you have to understand a little bit about how the market and appraisal and comps work. So essentially, the shortest way to say it is the sale price of the home it's a very important metric for the builder. For example, maybe you're in a community that's in phase 1 of 4 phases, and they're just getting started. So you come in, and it's a slow community. Houses haven't really started taking off. People don't want to live in the construction zone, and so they offer this incentive. Well, if this $35,000 incentive, if they take that off the sale price of the home, they're actually, in a way, shooting themselves in the foot. For every similar spec'd home in terms of, bed, bath, and square footage, they want to keep selling these houses in the future of that phase and the phases beyond at the same price, or hopefully for them, they're hoping higher. So if they want to get, say, $800,000 for this house, if they immediately discount that sale price and they sell it at $735,000, well, now that's sort of their floor that they have to work up from. And that can be really hard when a savvy buyer's agent comes and says, hey, look, man, we see that this house that you had listed, it didn't sell for the 800 you wanted it to sell for. It actually sold for seven. I think I said 35 earlier.
Yeah, so, yeah.
765. That public math getting me again. That's why I let
We
you
know what
do.
you
That's
meant.
why I
Yeah,
let you do the
yeah.
public math. No, so 765. We see that it actually sold for 765.
Yeah.
That's what my client will pay for a similar spec home. And then the builder kind of has their hands up in the air, like, oh, well, but like the home is worth 8, and like we gave him a discount, and so they're incentivized to make sure to give you that money in ways that don't face the public. As soon
Yeah.
as the house sells, it gets recorded in at the county and oftentimes in the local MLS.
Yep.
And it sets a benchmark that they have to negotiate against for all future sales.
Yeah, and it creates real headaches too with appraisers, because the appraiser, they can't see if 35 grand was offered as a closing cost credit or in the design studio, but they can see if it shows up as 765, and especially then as we're talking about, well, if a buyer's only bringing a minimal down payment or 3% down, well, it's like that could disqualify them from, like if the appraisal comes back low on an $800,000 base price home, it can create a real situation between the buyer and the builder. So, yeah, they really want to protect the value of the community. They don't want other people that closed on homes when maybe the incentive wasn't as sweet to be like, dude, what the
Yeah.
heck, you know? Why?
Doesn't help neighborhood cohesion when you're in the house, one house over, that is the exact same floor plan, almost the exact same finishes, and you got it for 30 grand less. And
Yeah.
to a certain standpoint, you might, if you're on the winning side of that situation, maybe you feel a little smug about yourself. But like, do you really want your neighbor to be upset at you that, like, you got your house 30 grand cheaper? Like, that doesn't feel good for anyone. And that's a bit of a anecdotal point here, but it is all these things. But
Yeah.
primarily for the builder, it is protecting their bottom line. It's so that they don't have to negotiate against themselves, and so that the appraisals don't come in a way that it could hurt the lending for the people trying to buy.
Yeah. Okay, so that hits our like 5 options. I think we had started this whole section too of like, well, builders aren't just offering these things out of the goodness of their heart. And so, do you want to get into just like how the economics of this works, or like how is the builder able to offer these kind of incentives?
Yeah, it'd be good to touch on that a little bit. The builder, there's a couple things working. It's the scale of economy in that you see that reflected in that the larger national builders are able to offer better incentives. They consistently, the dollar values are higher, and they get offered more often when you're talking Lennar, DR Horton. And not that the local regional builders like New Tradition Homes or Pacific Lifestyle don't, but the national builders, Lennar, DR, and Taylor Morrison, the other ones, they a lot of times, as I already mentioned, they're a part of the same company that owns the mortgage lending wing, which they call their preferred lender. Now, a regional builder might also have a preferred lender, but it's probably a totally separate entity that doesn't have a shared parent company. So the deal you can get from a regional builder is oftentimes not as good as you're going to get from a larger national builder. So you have economy of scale. The DRs of the world, they are able to buy huge swaths of land. They're able, so there's the home side. To cut through and give the short answer so that you can follow all the way through, is they price it into the sale of the home. That's essentially it, right? They buy the lot and they plan a type of house on it and they know what their margin is, and they say to themselves, well, if demand is high enough and we can just get this without, and like there's a frenzy, then it's just more money in our pocket. But if we price the house high initially, it gives us a couple levers to pull to try to get more interest in the house, if it's been sitting for a little while. So that's the short answer. The more complicated answer is that on the financing side for preferred lenders, they are able to buy credit at a cheaper rate, and that gets into what's called a forward commitment, and they're able to offer lower rates. But the short answer is economy of scale. It's built into their margin. They price their homes so that they're going to make a profit, selling the home, but there is cushion in their number because there's an expectation that maybe the house isn't going to sell immediately. And if we start with the initial price high, we have some levers to pull to try to gain more interest, to try to incentivize buyers to come through the door. And a lot of the time it's a competitive landscape, especially here in Clark County where there's a lot of builders going on. And so it really depends on how many houses are on the books, if they've had a bad quarter and they need to get rid of something. But that's the short answer.
Yeah, no, that's good. And so, I mean, you can negotiate further beyond just the advertised credit would be another sort of takeaway for buyers.
So then, don't give up any ground and know that it's not free money. What then, out of the options that we've gone through of the different types of credits, what would you say in your experience is the best choice in general? I mean, we got $35,000 on the table still, and we want to know how to use it.
Yeah, if I'm giving you $35K in flex cash, how are you gonna flex it? And back to even the last episode, right, of where it's like, well, it depends. So
there's a running theme there. It's that we don't like to give straight answers. That's not actually what it is.
They like to tailor it to your unique situation because that's the thing is, okay. The temporary buy down, I generally steer people away from. I don't like what it means for your monthly payment going up significantly year over year until you hit the market rate. It feels like savings for year one. Every year after that, it just feels like your house payment is going up. And we all have these idealistic visions of, well, it's just a tight year right now, but next year I'm going to get a raise and, I'll cut this back and cut that back. But the reality is for most people, they're not disciplined enough to either save that money or lifestyle just sort of has this tendency to creep and expand to fill whatever extra margin we have. And so while it feels like savings initially, for most people, I find that by year two, they regret it. Now, if you're only planning on being in the home for 3 or 4 years, we might want to have another conversation about whether or not it actually makes sense for you to be buying a home or this home right now. But let's just say that is your circumstance. You're only going to be in it for a few years. Well, then maybe a temporary buy down like that could be the limited sense in which it makes sense. Or if you have a crystal ball and that rates are going to come down by 2 or 3% in the next couple of years, or you're willing to take that risk, then a temporary buy down could be great because you get a huge discount for a couple of years. And then by the end of that buy down period, you refinance to the lower rate and all is gravy. That, again,
kind of like playing the stock market.
It kind of is. So I generally discourage people from going the temporary buy down route. Now, on the permanent buy down route, there is like real savings compared to the market rate today. The problem is that how many people actually stick with their original loan and rate from especially when rates are at 6.7%. Like there's again, I don't have the crystal ball, but I'd say that there's a reasonable likelihood that at some point in the next decade, rates will probably drop below 5% again, at least for some short period of time, because rates are cyclical, the economy is cyclical. And so the question is like, okay, if you drop 35 grand of your builder incentive to buy down your interest rate by 1%, what happens if rates drop in the next 3 years to even lower than what your current rate is with the buy down? Like, A, you're going to feel like I should refinance and take advantage of the lower rate. But then B, you haven't been in the current bought down permanent rate long enough to actually see the full
Realized any of the savings.
$35,000 of value. So you're actually leaving money on the table that way. However, this is again the gamble that a lot of buyers took in 2022, 23 as rates started to go up. They felt like, well, I'll just stick with the market rate. I'll use the buy down. I'll use the builder credit towards other things like off of the purchase price or design upgrades, and then I'll just refi in a couple of years. Well, a couple of years have come and went, and rates have stayed the same, if not gone up even higher. And so if you really just want the stability of like, hey, month to month cash flow is the thing that's most important to me. And I know that by doing a permanent rate buy down, I'm going to be saving $300, $400, $500 a month for the next 5+ year, however long I keep this loan. And that's what makes this home comfortably affordable for me. Then that's great. With the design studio, like upgrades, I think you made the point extremely well of like, if you're going to be in the home a long, long time and you're just trying to build your dream home, that might be a fine way to do it, especially if you're financing and you're concerned about appraisal issues. This can be an area where somebody will drop $100,000 into their base price $800,000 home, and then they start to run into real issues of, well, why is your home $100,000 more when these upgrades only add 60% in value? Well, that's where like being able to take 30 grand, 35 grand off of those upgrades keeps you out of trouble from an appraisal standpoint. And then if it's purely just an equity play for you, or you're a cash buyer, then the purchase price, I guess the one that I missed is the closing costs.
Yeah.
Right. Like
We touched on it just a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, if you're cash strapped and you're just, hey, I want to keep more savings, which frankly is, I think, always a good idea, especially when you're buying a home. Like, you just never know what surprises life is going to bring. And it seems like even if you're buying a brand new construction home, it's like you get the keys, and then the next thing you know, you got major car troubles. And
that is how life seems to go, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. You can never have all the good things all at once.
Yeah.
So being able to keep extra cash on hand and use those builder credits to knock out your closing costs can be a really good way to go too.
Yep. Yeah, and we blew past it a little bit, but once again, this goes back to just making sure whoever you're working with understands the differences in these incentives. There are actually caps on what you're allowed to use based off of what your loan is. And if you have a high risk loan, on like a above 95% LTV, meaning you only put 3% down, your lender is actually going to cap your lender is actually going to cap how much contribution the builder can put towards your rate buy down, your closing costs, right? And that all goes back to the builder wanting you to have a stake in your house and lowering the likelihood that you're going to default on your loan.
Yeah.
And so if you say, the builder says I got $35,000, you have to know how to structure that incentive that you might only be able to use 18 to 20,000 to actually buy down the rate and apply towards closing costs. And then if there's any extra, you have to convince the builder to use that towards design upgrades,
Yeah.
or so these deals can get a little complicated, and that's why the answer truly is it depends on your individual situation.
And I'm really glad you bring that up, because the way that for a podcast and trying to distill a whole lot of information all at once, like, it makes it sound like these are all binary. You can use it for this or that. But the reality is it's often both, and like some combination of, hey, I'll use 10,000 towards interest rate buy down. I'll use another 10,000 towards the closing costs, and then I'll use the remaining 15 towards upgrades, or whatever that actual breakdown looks like. Usually that money gets split a bunch of different ways, but the one thing that you don't want to get caught with is in the contract specifying, yep, I'm going to use all of it for closing costs, and then you find out that your lender has capped it, or that you can't use all of that money towards closing costs, because guess where any of the proceeds that you can't use end up going?
Back to the builder.
Back to the builder. And this is where having representation on these kind of deals, somebody that's able to look out for you, make sure that contract language is structured such that you're able to take full advantage of every single dollar that the builder is offering you and leverage that to your maximum benefit. And that's where we really feel like, yeah, we prove the value that we offer in representation.
Yeah. It's also important to, just on that note, if you're going to work with an agent for a new construction project, a lot of builders, they want the agent to actually register with the builder. So meaning, if you show up to a community and you sit down with the sales rep at the design center, most of the builders aren't going to say this, but every now and again they'll say, oh, like you don't need an agent, don't worry about it. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get out of paying the buyer's agent's commission. They're trying to essentially put that money back into their own pocket. And our recommendation is that you should have representation buying a new construction home, or at the very least be confident in this information and understand how different offers can be structured, and realize that the sales rep sitting in the model, they are not your friend. They work for the builder. They do not have your best interest in mind necessarily. Now, does that mean they're nefarious? No, but you also can't expect them to negotiate against the person who's signing their paycheck. So keep in mind, a lot of builders, they want your agent to register with you when they get to. And that's something bigger nationally. I don't know. A lot of the regional builders still want to see that?
They all, I mean, of course, every builder's trying to keep every dollar that they can to themselves. And so the nice thing is given my background, I've got relationships with pretty much all the builders. So if you've been into a model home and you're like, oh, crap, I didn't have an agent, I didn't specify someone, at least with the local builders, most of them are pretty understanding, especially if it's somebody that they have a relationship with. So there may be ways around it. You're not necessarily screwed. If you do walk into a model home, even if you haven't retained us or chosen an agent, like, I would just say, hey, I'm working with Nick and Dave at the Tartan Team, or whoever it is, just because you can always opt out of it later, but better to cover yourself up front. One last thing I'll say on this point, just so that you can have it in your head. Most builders in Clark County are offering around 2.5% to buyer agent for compensation, because Dave and I, Tartan Team, charges on a flat fee model, depending on the tier of service. There's often a difference between what the builder is willing to pay a buyer agent and what we actually charge. Usually the builder's willing to pay more than what our fee is.
That would be it would be 2.5 would be over $24,000 on an $800,000 house, to keep our example going.
Yeah. So the difference there between our fee and what the builder's offering goes back to you, and that actually factors in even more to like, all right, how do you want to leverage this? But that can be just another sort of like, not only do you get the best of having representation, but then you're able to maximize some of those dollars that most builders aren't just going to give you the 2.5% that they would give to an agent. But this is a nice way of getting around that while also getting real value of having somebody looking out for you throughout the process.
Yeah. Good. Super cool stuff. Hopefully, if nothing else, you found that informative for, if you're considering new construction on your own, or, maybe you're not in new construction, you're just like, well, what are all these incentives they're talking about? How could it really be that good? $35,000 off. And that's a little overview. But again, if you have questions, you can always book a call with us.
Yeah, we got a calculator on the site that we'll link to in the show notes that just helps. So if you've got a specific scenario that you want to run and see the numbers yourself, but these things are always worked out best in conversation. So do take us up on that. Subscribe to the show, share it with somebody who you think would be helped by the content here. Leave us a review too. We'd love to. It just helps with getting more of the listeners and things that are good.
Yeah.
All right. Clearly, I have said enough words, so we should probably call it here. We'll see y'all in the next one.
Thanks for listening.